And just like that, it's time for our weekly roundup of all the things Lady just ain't gonna do this week. Number 1, kick the can down the road when it comes to voting rights. Well, folks, the saga continues, and it's not looking good right now for voting rights. President Biden delivered a speech this week in Pennsylvania where he laid out the urgency of protecting voting rights, calling on Republicans to protect democracy by protecting the right to vote. He did not, however, address the obstructionist Democrats who are blocking progress on this bill, nor did he call for any kind of filibuster reform, which is one of the main obstacles in the way of getting this done. At the same time, the president noted that he has passed this on to Vice President Kamala Harris to get it done. And what's clear from his speech is that he would like to get it done in a bipartisan fashion, which you and I both know good and goddamn well just ain't finna happen. Senate Republicans have been holding this country hostage for a while now. That's been true, and it's a fact, so don't at me. But the thing I just can't understand from a strategy perspective is why President Biden and Vice President Harris, alongside Majority Leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, why heads have not started to roll on the Democratic side. It seems to me the point of a team is to move in unison. And if there are folks out of step, you either correct the behavior or you make sure there's consequences. I mean, look, Arizona Republicans were quick to send a message to Cindy McCain when she challenged the big lie, took her out of leadership and kept it pushing. But Democrats seem to enjoy the pomp and circumstance and not the power. 2022 is coming faster than we know it. And one thing is for sure. If Democrats don't get it all the way together with this voting rights stuff, good luck motivating our people in the midterms. Hell, half of us won't even be able to vote if we wanted to, the way this bullshit is being set up. Jesus Lord. Other things Lady just ain't gonna do this week is call for any kind of U.S. intervention in Cuban affairs. Now, before I start off with this, let me say something, and let me say it very clearly. Some of y'all folks in my DMs are doing the absolute most. I support BLM. Hell, I helped to start BLM 8 years ago, and I am not synonymous with BLM. I'm my own person. I got my own opinions. I'm not in leadership of the organization, none of that. But I am a supporter of BLM, and I am a fellow traveler. Now, as I said on my Instagram this week, I can always tell when BLM does something people don't like because my DMs be in shambles before I'm even really sure what the hell is going on. Now, this certainly happened this week when news came out that the largest protests seen since the Cuban Revolution were happening in Cuba, amidst anguish and anger over food shortages and lack of access to basic needs. BLM posted a statement yesterday about their position on what was happening. And like I said, my DMs have been full of messages about this, some well-intentioned and respectful, but too many that were out here sounding like the racist white people that go off on me pretty much daily. To me, what is responsible for a USian to do in moments like this is to shut the fuck up and learn first and foremost before making a statement about anything happening anywhere else. And frankly, folks, for me, that's what I've been doing, learning and listening. So today, we gonna talk about being honest about what I know and what I don't know. Now, what I know is that Cuba had a revolution against a regime that was in power that was harmful to the people. What I know is that many people who supported that regime fled Cuba during the revolution and have since become a political force in the United States, mostly aligning themselves with the same conservatives that attack this movement each and every day. What I also know about the Cuban Revolution is that it has been attacked ever since, as most radical movements are. I also know that movements can be complicated and they can fall short. There have been so many successes of the Cuban Revolution. That is undeniable. Literacy levels, solidarity with social movements around the world, including the Black Liberation Movement, advances in medicine, advances in healthcare. Are there still problems in Cuba? Yes. And I am learning more about what those are, especially as it relates to access to basic needs. What I know is that some of that is actually about the U.S. embargo against Cuba. And some of that falls outside of the embargo. I'm learning about what goes where. I know that the U.S. embargo is intended to choke Cuba of access to what it needs to survive. I also know that the Rona and all the travel restrictions of the last year and a half made a bad situation worse, and people are standing in long lines for food, for medicine, and for more. I know that most of the world is suffering from a lack of access to the Rona vaccine. And even though Cuba has developed its own vaccine, I know that its distribution is not widespread yet. So people are getting sick, which leads to another kind of desperation. And there are problems that need to be reckoned with. I'm also learning about what's happening. Now, y'all know our news media is fucked up. So in learning, I also have to know how to apply filters based on what I know about those outlets. I am concerned that these legitimate protests are in some ways being hijacked by people who would have defended the previous regime, and some people who have defended and still do defend the nonsense of the orange menace that used to be the president here. I am really concerned and appalled about the state violence that is being unleashed against these protesters. It's wrong. I don't believe that leaders should be in power indefinitely, and I think it's actually been a major weakness of left social movements, no matter how you slice it. And I absolutely do not believe in U.S. intervention, which has been proven to be used to destabilize governments and communities in favor of our own U.S. brand of chaos, which doesn't even work for people here, much less people outside of the United States. So that's some of what I know. And that's some of what I don't know. And I'm sure there's a whole lot more. I think learning is important to cut through what I find to be dogmatic propaganda on a lot of sides. And I purposely didn't say both sides because there are actually many sides. So I'm learning, and not in the 5G logic kind of way of being an independent thinker with faulty-ass logic. I'm saying it in the way of honest acknowledgments of where movements and revolutions fall short and in some cases fail, while also upholding that capitalism and U.S. imperialism ain't the fucking business either, if we are all being honest. From what I can gather overall, here's the deal. People are protesting the government, and some of those protesters are defenders of the revolution, and some of them are not. And what sits in the middle of all of this is that U.S. racist-ass foreign policy, coupled with the real problems of how to provide for people, and the people who are not getting what they need to live with dignity. So there's that on that. My solidarity extends to those who are fighting for self-determination, for human rights and human dignity, and to those who oppose U.S. intervention, and to those who are trying to find a way out of the misery and destruction that this economic system has created for so many of us around the world. I'm going to keep learning, and I know I'm going to get some stuff wrong, and I hope you'll be courageous enough to do the same. But you know who ain't gonna get it wrong? The Cuban people, who are defending their revolution and holding their government accountable all at the same time. And Jesus, for the love of God and everything holy, please stop tagging me every time BLM does something you don't like. Okay, that's that on that. Let's follow up on Haiti. I promised I would do this in the last episode, and so I'm back. Lady promised to keep doing some learning on what was happening in Haiti, and so she wants to lift up this writing in The New Yorker this week by Edwidge Dandakat, who is one of Lady's favorite writers. Now, what we're learning about the assassination of the president is that it involved 2 Haitian Americans and 26 Colombian nationals who were recruited for the job by a Haitian American pastor from Florida. Lord Jesus, who planned to take over the job of president. He believed he was like divinely anointed or something like that. So apparently they done got up into this man's residence by claiming that they were a part of the United States Drug Enforcement Agency and that they were doing an operation. Now, the State Department in the U.S. has denied any involvement in this assassination. And it's true that one of the Haitian American assailants was a DEA informant formerly. There were no casualties at all amongst the president's security team. The president's wife was wounded in the attack, and she's expected to survive. But what comes to light here is this. Haiti, the world's first independent Black republic, has been under attack for a very long time. And this has basically led to worsening conditions, political destabilization, violence, poverty, and now rampant COVID-19 infections with no access to vaccines. And when I say destabilization that has been led by the United States and France, what I mean is that when Haiti won its independence from France in 1804, the slave-owning United States isolated Haiti for fear that their revolution would become contagious here. France then went ahead and extorted money from Haiti on the basis of the economic losses that it suffered as a result of Haiti becoming an independent nation. That extortion was to the tune of what would be estimated today at $21 billion. And having to pay that money has made and kept Haiti poor. The United States occupied Haiti for 2 decades after its president was assassinated in 1915, and it was terrorized by coups and dictatorships, with one notable dictator being Papa Doc Duvalier, a notoriously brutal dictator who ruled for 14 years with the help of the military. Papa Doc was overthrown by a popular uprising, and in the first free election, Jean-Bertrand Aristide was elected president, and then overthrown 2 years later by the military. Since then, the United States has had peacekeeping forces in the country, but the poverty and the corruption remains. And so while it is shocking to learn that the president of Haiti was assassinated, we should be just as shocked about the ways in which this country in particular participates in the suffocation of countries who dare to be free. That was a lot, y'all. Here's what we want more of this week, though. Number 1, putting it all on the line for voting rights. Now, I know we just talked about all the things we weren't going to do in relationship to how these pieces of legislation aren't moving, but this just in that Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, chairperson of the Congressional Black Caucus, our friend Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter, and several other Black women activists were arrested for defending voting rights at the United States Capitol today. The crew was protesting to call attention to the need to pass the For the People Act, which would provide sweeping protections for our right to participate in the decisions that impact our lives, and protections in particular from the efforts of the party formerly known as Republicans, who are basically trying to pick their voters rather than voters picking them. Lady loves this because it is time to turn up the heat. And if your majority leaders won't act like a majority and lead, once again, Black women step up to provide the leadership y'all were so desperately missing in the first place. Other things that Lady loves this week is Friends. Okay, so I know this was a long-ass roundup, I know, but we are committed to giving you news you can use. But on a personal note, I just want to say that one thing Lady loves this week is her friends. I have been going through it, y'all, and if you know me, you know that there are not just big changes happening in the world around us, but there's big changes happening in my life as well. And without getting into all the damn details of that, what I just want to do now is shout out my friends who have really held me through this whole process. Thank you for letting me cry, and thank you for letting me keep it moving too when I needed to do that. Thank you for calling to check in on me. Thank you for affirming and encouraging me and reminding me that we get nowhere in life without each other. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. And I thank you for all the grace that y'all have extended to me.